That's the NRBQ Horns. They had Flo and Eddie on that album. Great stuff by the Psychedelic Furs. Can't go wrong with those guys. Always awesome. Always great lyrics. Well, okay. The breaking news. A lot of you probably heard this around midday or so today, and I heard it maybe the same time you did. It spread like wildfire. And unfortunately, I think there's something missing from this. So I'm going to give you the basics of it, some of the fundamentals. We'll show you some of the images, get some video footage of the president deriding this guy, Speaker Johnson deriding this guy, and then hopefully pull out of it something from this corpus that, of course, brings up some mental grist for the mill when we try to keep these guys at least close to their supposed promise about the U.S. Constitution. And, of course, we're going to talk about the 250th anniversary of Evacuation Day in colonial history towards the end of the program. Got a little video segment that I found there in the history, and Anarchy Andrew texted me about it. I said, yeah, dude, I'm right with you. 250 years ago today, big story out of Boston history. Major story, of course. But the breaking story. Donald Trump's national security bureaucrat, who's second to Tulsi Gabbard, resigns over the U.S. attack on Iran for Israel. And he specifically said that it was for Israel. We've got his letter. I'll read you the letter. And I want to give you some background on this man, okay? His story itself has amazing sadness in it, and some major lessons that, again, I think should be handed off to especially younger people looking at United States history and the supposed composition of this U.S. government. Joseph Kent is his name. He's the director of the National Counterterrorism Center. He resigned today, explaining his disaffection from the Trump administration over its attack on Iran. Now, here's some biographical information about him, and I mixed in some commentary on this because I think it's important to bring up. And it doesn't touch on the final point that I want to bring up, and I'll do that after we read his letter. Mr. Kent is a retired U.S. Army Chief Warrant Officer and a former Green Beret with the Special Forces, with a long career in special operations. He served approximately 20 years in the military, including time as an Army Ranger before transitioning, there you go, to Special Forces. His military so-called service, of course, service off of your dime, included 11 combat deployments, 3 years as a Ranger, followed by 8 deployments with the 5th Special Forces Group. Now, maybe some of this is just sort of blurring for you. It's not particularly interesting or pertinent to what's going on, but it does serve as pretext to the fact that this guy was very, very gung-ho about America, American military, and trying to, it seems, do the right thing to work within the governmental system. And he did 3 more with a special operations task force. Much of his career focused on counterterrorism and, of course, unconstitutional occupation operations in Iraq, which, as we've noted about Tulsi Gabbard, he allowed himself to be part of, to leave a preposition dangling. He was also in Afghanistan and other zones during the fake, ill-titled global war on terror. His actions in those zones indicate that he did not conform to his U.S. Constitution. So as much as he's being lauded and celebrated as a man who's speaking up now, one has to ask, why did he allow himself, why did he voluntarily engage in those activities, which also were clearly not just unconstitutional, anti-constitutional? And he allowed himself to be deployed without a declaration of war. That's a standout thing that no one has asked. They're looking at his courageous move today, and they're not discussing the fact that he could have made any of these courageous moves many times in his 30 plus years or 20 plus years and 11 combat deployments. Why didn't he? And again, why didn't Tulsi Gabbard? She said she was for peace. He retired in 2018. He's a Gold Star husband. And this is where it gets even sadder. He lost his wife, Shannon Mary Kent, who was originally named Smith, in combat. Shannon was a U.S. Navy senior chief petty officer. She was promoted posthumously and cryptologic technician. She was fluent in multiple languages. And you got it, she was killed in Syria. She served in elite roles, including as a member of JSOC's Intelligence Support Activity, a secretive special operations intelligence unit supporting operations with Navy SEALs and other forces. She was the first woman to complete the Navy Special Warfare Direct Support Course and operate in direct combat with special Navy warfare units. Now, she was killed by ISIS. She was killed by figures who are now associated with the leadership that Donald Trump invited to the White House. The very figures that Donald Trump worked with when he was president earlier, when he was sitting on a third of Syria. This man's wife was killed by figures who have been supported by your tax money and his own tax money. Of course, his career was built off of the military, so it was built off of basically other people's taxes. Let me read to you what he had to say, and we'll focus on that before I distract with any other thoughts about what this man might have thought of before, what he could have thought of, what he should have thought of, any of those things, and look at the immediate today activity, all right? Because this is where things are really flaming up. And then I want to derive the lesson from it at the end as we sort of tail off on this. It's sort of like hitting a keynote. You're seeing the attack, sustain, and then we'll get to the decay on the sound. Okay. So Joe Kent posted this on X. After much reflection, I have decided to resign from my position as director of the National Counterterrorism Center, effective today. So remember, he was number 2 underneath Tulsi Gabbard. She has not said a thing about this. She spoke out about a Trump administration member's battle with breast cancer, but she didn't speak out about this. She's supposed to appear in front of Congress tomorrow. Will she resign? Will she say anything? He says, I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no immediate threat to our nation, and it is clear that we started this, and you'll see on X, I don't know how many retweets or re-X's this has gotten, but it must be in the tens of thousands. He says, and it is clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. It has been an honor serving under POTUS and DNI Gabbard and leading the professionals at NCTC. May God bless America. Now, the letter is a little bit small, so I've taken it and transcribed it. So this is what he said. It's inside the news notes there. President Trump, after much reflection, I have decided to resign from my position as director of the National Counterterrorism Center, effective today. I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no immediate threat to our nation, and it is clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. I support the values of the foreign policies that you campaigned on in 2016, 2020, 24, and 24, which you enacted in your first term. Until June of 2025, you understood that the wars in the Middle East were a trap that robbed America of the precious lives of our patriots and depleted the wealth and prosperity of our nation, his wife being one of the people who was killed there. In your first administration, you understood better than any modern president how to decisively apply military power without getting us drawn into never-ending wars. You demonstrated this by killing Qasem Soleimani and by defeating ISIS. Okay, so the Soleimani thing, obviously this man doesn't understand. That was extra-constitutional and illegal on an international level. Defeating ISIS, he didn't defeat ISIS, he supported ISIS. So both of those items there are black marks in this letter. Clearly questionable. Early in this administration, high-ranking Israeli officials and influential members of the American media deployed a misinformation campaign that wholly undermined your America First platform. So he's casting shade on them. That's what he's saying. It's not the earlier administration with the Russia canard. It's this administration. And it's the Israeli officials. Early in this administration, high-ranking Israeli officials and influential members of the American media deployed a misinformation campaign that wholly undermined your America First platform. So Donald Trump is a victim of misinformation now? Is that the case? Who believes that? I don't believe it at all. Not a chance. Donald Trump knows very, very well what's going on. He can't deny the genocide. He also can't deny the millions and hundreds of millions of dollars that the Adelsons have given him. I don't see any mention of the Adelsons here. Do you? No. So this is a real mixed bag. He mentions, your America First platform, they sowed pro-war sentiments to encourage a war with Iran. Now, again, if Donald Trump had any sense of the Constitution, and if this man had any sense of the Constitution, he would know that it's not whether or not he was drawn into it by some sort of misinformation campaign. That's only part of it. The functional part of it is, was this constitutionally done? And then the deeper ethical part of it is, do either of those men have any right to force you to pay for anything? No, they don't. And that should be the start of the question. He says this echo chamber was used to deceive you into believing that Iran posed an imminent threat to the United States, and that should you strike now, there was a clear path to a swift victory. This was a lie and is the same tactic the Israelis used to draw us into the disastrous Iraq war that cost our nation the lives of thousands of our best men and women. We cannot make this mistake again. As a veteran who deployed to combat 11 times and as a Gold Star husband who lost my beloved wife, Shannon, in a war manufactured by Israel, I cannot support sending the next generation off to fight and die in a war that serves no benefit to the American people, nor justifies the cost of American lives. I pray that you will reflect upon what we are doing in Iran and who we are doing it for. The time for bold action is now. You can reverse course and chart a new path for our nation, or you can allow us to slip further into decline and chaos. You hold the cards. It was an honor to serve in your administration and to serve our great nation. Joseph Kemp, Director, National Counterterrorism Center. Well, if it was an honor to serve in your administration, I guess that's far in the past tense, because if it was an honor, then why are you leaving? Obviously, it wasn't an honor. Otherwise, you'd still be there. Now, the other major factors here that I think are really important. Again, he's casting shade on any possible responsibility that Donald Trump might have for his own frigging actions. It was Donald Trump was deceived. Donald Trump was given canards. Donald Trump was misled. No, if we could know the information, Donald Trump could very well know the information. Either he didn't care or he did care and decided to go against that information. Either way, doesn't matter within the context of what is supposedly proper on his oath and Mr. Kent's oath for the Constitution. So here's my question to you. Why didn't Mr. Kent do this last year after Donald Trump attacked Iran the first time? Why did he have to wait? Why did it take so long for a guy just starting with the Trump administration to stick with the Trump administration after that? How about the invitation of Giuliani into the White House? Why didn't he resign then? I thought Donald Trump destroyed ISIS. Don't forget, Al Giuliani was with ISIS until he formed another splinter group that the United States government supported. Is it possible that even the people who are resigning in what appears to be a positive move to show people that they're frustrated inside the Trump administration because of the Israeli influence, is it possible that they could actually ascribe some culpability to the guys who are making the decisions and look internally with some introspection and say, you know, I made a mistake even joining you because I swore an oath to the Constitution in the military. And of course, we go to the earlier questions. If this man is such a great paladin of that wondrous document, the U.S. Constitution, which I didn't sign and you didn't sign, and has been forced onto us with the promises, the fatuous fake promises that they've got a system under which they're going to operate, then why is it that this guy who joined the military over and over and over and over again took commands and took your money in actions that went completely against what they promised us would be this operating system for the U.S. Constitution? It is very obvious, a declaration of war. That's all. You don't go occupy nations. You don't go dealing with ISIS. You don't hand them weapons. And your wife shouldn't have been over there. All of these things are manifest. It doesn't mean I hate somebody for mentioning the fact that these are clear distinctions between what they promised us they would do when they took their oaths and what they did, regardless of the outcome for his wife or his family or his future. They took actions that broke their oaths, period. There's no denying it. The consequences of those actions brought death to his wife and death to thousands, perhaps millions of people around the world. And it continues. So he has resigned, and he's looking like a big hero because now suddenly he's upset about what Trump is doing in Iran. Now? Really? We're a quarter of the way into the new year. They already bombed Iran. I don't understand how this works with Joe Kent. I don't get it. And one of the things I think is interesting is that many people are looking at Joe Kent as being a pretty stand-up guy who was very patriotic and worked within the system, within the military for years and put in a lot of service. Just that concept as a standard shows people how completely off base the contemporary conception of the U.S. military is compared to what is actually in the document they're supposed to be defending. The operational system, again, is on autopilot. You enter the military, you go where they send you. You go through your training, you try to move up the ranks. You become a professional in it, or you get out and you get some dispensation when you leave. And then you use your skills to get a different job. Never questioning that if they send you to another country without a declaration of war and you're on some foreign base and you've got a firearm, there's a big problem there because you're part of a standing army and the founders didn't want that. You shouldn't be deployed. And then the ethical problem of you eating your MREs off of the back of my neighbor in another country, perhaps guarding the poppy fields in Afghanistan, or perhaps trying to overthrow ISIS, overthrow Syria. With HTS, al-Jilani, now known as al-Sharaa. Now, Steve Swan's got some commentary here. Joe Kent is CIA. CIA Tucker Carlson had him on his Fox News program many times. He says, so Fuentes and his groypers made sure Kent didn't get elected to Congress. And he says, Joe Kent is positioning himself to run for Congress again. There you go. Let's check in on Rumble and see what you guys think. And let me know if you think I'm off base. There's one of our new videos, by the way, that's out there. You can check that out. Liberty Conspiracy Fact File. Immoral U.S. attack on Iran backfires. Strait of Hormuz closed to U.S.-Israeli trade. But MAGA hacks claim Iran is the problem. And, of course, they claim that the U.S. economy is fine. Heading on over here to the chats to say hello to everybody. Yona is in the house. Yona, the email has the link. So check it out. And Brandon is there. Hey, Brandon, thank you. Yes, he says, or keep detainees against the Geneva Convention in Gitmo, like me. Brandon, perfectly stated. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. You've got Hegseth, you've got Ron DeSantis, and so many people who were aware of that and allowed it to happen. And don't forget, Antonin Scalia, when those guys sued for habeas, before he even heard one of the cases, I think it was the Hamdi case, not the Hamdan case. Before he even heard the case, he said, I'll be damned if I give that guy habeas, because Scalia's own son was in the military deployed overseas. So that shows you how deep the rot is. You've got a Supreme Court justice, one of the best respected conservatives, who has no problem with his son being deployed overseas with no declaration of war, in a clear U.S. aggression that Ron Paul called out by offering a declaration of war, even though he opposed the action. And Scalia says he prejudiced himself and didn't even recuse himself before he even heard the case. I'll be damned if I give those guys and Gitmo habeas. Well, I'm sorry, the Constitution hasn't been amended and Congress didn't lift the writ, so you have to give them habeas. Those are the rules of your stupid game. It's incredible. By the way, a couple emails. Mark, thank you. And someone else emailed me. I got to read it. I didn't get to respond to you yet. Absolutely. And Mark Young, I want to put this on the screen. God will judge everyone. Most members of the military are brainwashed into equating support of Israel with patriotism. Yes, thanks, Yona. Great stuff. So I don't think I'm off base bringing up these questions. I don't think that I should be, down on myself as being critical of this guy for bringing up points as I read this, as I heard about this guy's background and his wife's background, to say, no, these are thistles on the sweater that looks so great as this guy's, out there doing his thing, calling attention to Israel. First, he's giving an out to Donald Trump like he was somehow fooled by Israel. And second, this guy engaged over and over. His whole career has been anti-constitutional. And suddenly now, after he joined the anti-constitutional Trump administration last year, and he went through all this crap that Trump has been doing, assassinating people in the Eastern Pacific and in the Caribbean, he didn't resign then? It takes this? He worked for friggin' Pete Hegseth, fist pump Hegseth, when they assassinated people in Yemen 6 months ago. No, a year ago. Almost 10 months ago. He didn't leave then. Or was he just about to join? Why would he join in that case? What date did he join? I don't even know. He might have been in the vetting process at that point. Jeez. So as I noted, Mr. Kent offers a valuable insight regarding Israel, but he took a long time to steer just a bit closer to the Constitution, and he still is not really acknowledging its rules. Likewise, Mr. Trump is a confused mess. He hired Kent, but now says that Kent never was good on national security. Since that term, of course, is a Barnum word that lets politicians claim national security as anything they desire it to be, all for your good, of course, so you better pay up. And, of course, without giving you a chance to not pay, Trump is using it as an out, while also contradicting himself for his original decision to let the man work for him. It's also stunning to see Trump claim Mr. Kent was weak when Mr. Trump slipped out of military action himself. Of course, military action into which hundreds of thousands of men of his era were conscripted. So this is when he nominated him. It's my pleasure to nominate Joe Kent as the director of the National Counterterrorism Center. Why is there a National Counterterrorism Center? As a soldier, Green Beret, and CIA officer, Joe has hunted down terrorists and criminals his entire life. Oh, yeah, that's right. There's a National Counterterrorism Center to allow them to use the term terrorism to apply to anything they don't like and get more money funding a terrorist state upon us. How does the state operate? Through threats, intimidation, and violence. Is that terroristic? I would say yes. Do we need to go any further? No, because at that point, it doesn't matter what agents of the state define as terrorism. They're the agents of terror. I'm not hiring them voluntarily. Period. Point. Closed. Everything done. Joe continues to honor her legacy, as his wife Shannon, of course, died a great American hero. Congratulations, Joe. So, of course, here's Trump now. Trump on Joe Kent. I always thought he was weak on security, very weak on security. It's a good thing that he's out. Now, I just want to double check on my system because there were a few of these that I had to record and make loud enough for you. So I want to head on over there and check these out for you. Make sure that one of these is Donald Trump's super styling awesomeness. Okay. All right. Make sure this is loud enough. Yeah. Yeah. This is it. This is the one I had to amp up. All right. So here's Trump. This is his response.
Well, I read his statement. I always thought he was a nice guy, but I always thought he was weak on security, very weak on security. I didn't know him well, but I thought he seemed like a pretty nice guy. But when I read his statement, I realized that it's a good thing that he's out, because he said that.
All right, so let's just pause it there, because he gets to another point where we have to make some substantive corrections to the reality here, or actually bring reality in to correct what he's saying. But again, if he always thought he was weak on security, why would he hire somebody? That indicates to us that Donald Trump actually doesn't care much about security. That would indicate that Donald Trump is weak on security, wouldn't it? If you think somebody's weak on security and you hire somebody who you think is weak on security, what does that make you? For God's sake, what a stupid thing to say. There's no way around this. There's no possible way. I mean, these are significantly dumb things that indicate some major problems with the functioning of this White House, even on their level. They don't even hold their own standards.
It was not a threat.
So yes, Iran was not a threat, as Joe Kent said. Iran was not a threat. He's flabbergasted by that.
Iran was a threat. Every country realized what a threat Iran was. The question is whether or not they wanted to do something about it. They've been a threat for a long time, but they've really been a threat. If I didn't terminate Obama's horrible deal that he made, the Iran nuclear deal, you would have had a nuclear war 4 years ago.
Okay, so Donald Trump says, again, if I didn't terminate Obama's nuclear deal, you would have had a nuclear war, 4 years ago, right? So there's a little more.
You would have had nuclear holocaust, and you would have had it again if we didn't bomb the site. So when somebody is working with us that says they didn't think Iran was a threat, we don't want those people, because...
Okay, so as we mentioned, prior to his first bombing in Iran, Tulsi Gabbard testified in front of Congress that the intelligence community had determined that Iran wasn't a threat. It had never been a threat. It always was open, and that Obama nuclear deal is what we mentioned before, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which the United States dumped under Trump, which, of course, many MAGA conservatives claim saw Obama give $50 billion to Iran when this money was held up by, let me just double check on that. Yeah. When this money was held up by other countries, and it was Iran's money. And it was supposed to be even more than that. It was $50 million, supposed to be $100 million. And people are all excoriating Obama for actually coming through with half of what the United States owed to the Iranians. And it wasn't directly coming from the U.S. It was held in escrow in other countries, as we mentioned last night. So that's part of the criticism that they use in the polarity of Republicans versus Democrats, of course. Oh, it's Obama. He gave money to the Iranians. That was Iranian money that was being held for decades. It had been stolen. Second, the Iranians not only were open to nuclear inspections to show that it was a civilian nuclear energy program, they held on to not increasing the refining capacity, the refining degree, for another year after Trump dumped it in 2018. They stuck with it. And they allowed American inspectors, in addition to the IAEA, to go in and inspect. Donald Trump is utterly lying. And it was Tulsi Gabbard who last year at this time was very upfront and said there's no threat. If he doesn't want people like Joe Kent, then I guess he doesn't want Tulsi Gabbard, and she should resign tomorrow in front of Congress, because Donald Trump clearly doesn't want her. I'll give you this. Anti-war on the headline. Top U.S. counterterrorism official resigns over war with Iran. And this, for example, shows us gangland dons varying statements about control over the Strait of Hormuz within the course of an hour. And we'll get into some of that stuff. Okay. Now, I want to go with a little bit more about Donald Trump's claims and this man. on the resignation. I want to go with the judge and Aaron Mate on this. And then we're going to hear, well, actually, before we even do that, let me show you what the speaker said. Speaker Johnson. This one's incredible. This comes from NEMA and Dialogue Works speaking with Colonel Wilkerson. This is NEMA this afternoon live. I actually recorded it, but I'll play it straight from here on my Substack.
The whole concept, the whole rhetoric is just falling apart. And you see who's the establishment, who's not the establishment. For example, Mike Johnson today came out and totally defending Donald Trump. And here is what he said, Larry.
Yeah. On the Gang of Eight, I got all the briefings. We all understood there was clearly an imminent threat, that Iran was very close to the enrichment of nuclear capability, and they were building missiles at a pace that no one in the region could keep up with. They were far outpacing our allies and friends and us in our defense capability, because we had personnel, installations, members of the armed services, and civilians in the region.
Okay, so that's a euphemistic way to say we were occupying zones all around Iran with unconstitutional U.S. bases for an unconstitutional standing army and funding them in a $40 trillion indebted nation state. And we worried that our aggression and encircling of Iran, and we worried that Israeli aggression against Iran might possibly put those guys at risk, but we'll blame Iran.
Iran was building up ballistic missiles at such a rapid pace, and we knew that their plan was to fire them upon Americans. The commander-in-chief and his administration had
Their plan was to fire them upon Americans in defense if Americans attacked, like they had over and over and over again. For God's sake, how is it possible that these people can stand behind this lying man and accept this absolute drivel? As I noted, regarding Kent, Speaker Johnson clearly lied this afternoon.
very difficult decision to make. I don't know where Joe Kent is getting his information, but he wasn't in those briefings, clearly, because the Secretary of State, the Secretary of War, and everyone, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Kane, they had exquisite intelligence, and we understood that this was a serious moment for us. Had the president waited, I am personally convinced that we would have mass casualties of Americans, service members and others, and our installations would have been dramatically damaged. And so we had to, the president felt that he had to strike first to prevent those mass casualties. That's a summary. I can't tell you the classified.
So again, it's defensive aggression. It's aggression for defense. You see how that works? You get it. It's preemptive defense by engaging in offense, otherwise known as murder and war crimes and unconstitutional military activity without a declaration of war. And that's the Speaker of the House. All of those people have multiple times sworn oaths to the Constitution, every single one of them. That's what we're facing. That's their operating system. It's a stunning reality, a stark differential, the chasm between the way Washington works, the way these people work, the way that the political establishment works, and the oaths that they take that they don't even seriously consider when they're taking them.
Part, but that's a summary that's made public and it's accurate. Yeah, monitor.
Let me just tell you what he didn't say. This is what Johnson would have said had he been honest and free with his words. Maybe at the beginning, maybe in the middle, maybe at the end. And we are on God's side. We are on Jesus Christ's side. And we are going to triumph because it is time for Jesus to come back down. It is time for Armageddon. It is time for the end times. That's what Mike Johnson would have said if he didn't think it would be at that point politically bad to say that from the speaker's rostrum, because that's Mike Johnson.
You know what?
Otherwise, it was mostly lies.
Exactly. And I thought that Lawrence Wilkerson brought up a very good point. Imagine if Mike Johnson is much like Mike Huckabee, much like Ted Cruz. If he is that Christian Zionist mindset, much like Mike Hegseth, Pete Hegseth, these people are willing to engage in massive deception and, moreover, mass murder in order to do what they think is necessary to bring the second coming. That's really messed up. And it was people like Pete Hegseth and Marco Rubio who explicitly said that America is fighting deranged religious leaders in Iran. They're the ones who have a hold of your purse strings and your children's purse strings. The very fact that someone wants to enter an office that they have to know is funded through taxation indicates that either they don't understand that taxation is done through immoral means, that's what taxes are, or they do understand it and they don't care. Either way, they're disregarding Christian principles. All political institutions are anti-Christian because they operate through coercion, extortion, and theft. And they put themselves in a polis as leaders and authorities over men, between God and man. The punishment will come from the state here on earth through material means rather than from God. And you will have to pay for it regardless of whether you're participating or not, whether you're getting anything from it. Let me show you Aaron Mate and the judge. Excellent stuff.
Time to the breaking news of the resignation of the senior counterterrorism official in the Trump administration. I just want to read a portion of his resignation letter. The echo chamber was used to deceive you into believing that Iran posed an imminent threat to the United States and that you should strike now. There was a clear path to a swift victory. This was a lie and is the same tactic the Israelis used to draw us into the disastrous Iraq war that cost our nation the lives of thousands of our best men and women. We cannot make this mistake again. Whoever thought we would hear something like that in writing from such a senior high-ranking official? And where is his boss, Tulsi Gabbard, on this? I pass the ball to you, my friend.
Well, I'm not surprised to see this coming from Joe Kent. For people who don't know who he is a U.S. Army veteran who lost his wife, the mother of his children, in Syria to an ISIS suicide bomber. And Joe Kent, ever since then, has been very critical of the permanent war state inside Washington because he partially faults them for his late wife's murder, because it was in Syria that Trump ordered the withdrawal of U.S. troops in his first term. And what happened? Trump's order was ignored by U.S. military commanders and State Department officials. In fact, one State Department official, a senior one for Syria, bragged that essentially the officials under Trump were misleading him and basically lying to him about how many troops were there in order to keep them inside of Syria. And so given that Joe Kent has been critical of West Asian military interventions like in Syria, given that he bought into Trump's campaign pledges of no new foreign wars and Trump's criticism of previous interventions like in Iraq and Syria, it's no surprise to me that Joe Kent can't in good conscience go along with this act of deception. And he said that in a statement that, he believed Trump when he campaigned on no new wars and criticized regime change operations abroad. And so therefore Trump completely betraying that at the behest of Israel.
So I'll just pause it there. I don't understand how Joe Kent could believe Donald Trump in any way whatsoever when he's talking about no more foreign wars. Donald Trump openly bragged about how they were sitting in Syria and they were sitting on they were sitting on the oil. We have the oil. Donald Trump bombed an airfield in Syria. All of those things are unconstitutional. You don't work for an administration that engages in those things if you too are swearing an oath to the Constitution, because your higher ups already have shown that they will flout the Constitution. How can you join up something that's already shown itself to be completely corrupt? I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me. Amazing. Now, Trump also claimed today that he was not warned about Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz, even as he claimed that if he had not terminated the Obama nuclear deal, as we heard, the JCPOA, Iran would have developed nuclear weapons and used them on Israel and other nations. And as I mentioned, not only did Iran stick with the JCPOA for nearly a year after the U.S. never abided by it, under Trump, Iran allowed U.S. inspectors to check its civilian nuclear energy program, plus IAEA inspectors to come in and check. Trump pulling out of the agreement circa 2018 led to Iran upping its refinement, but even that was not to weapons grade level. So let's go with this one and show you a little more as we start to dig in deeper on the Iran issue. And in a moment, we'll look at the major figure who was killed by Israel. Here's Glenn Deason, and he offers us this cut of Trump making, again, a false claim.
Incredible what we've done. I tell you, the job we've done.
He says it's incredible what we've done, the job we've done.
Incredible what we've done. I tell you, the job we've done. You know, if I didn't terminate Barack Hussein Obama's Iran nuclear deal, you would right now, well, Israel would be gone. It would be incinerated. And probably the Middle East likewise. And remember, they have all of those missiles. And I heard they were sending missiles to UAE. I said, that's strange. You know, UAE is like the banker for Iran. They're like the banker. Qatar, their neighbors, they got along okay.
So he goes through all those things, and he says, he eventually says that he never expected that Iran would retaliate against U.S. military bases in the Gulf states.
All of a sudden, Kuwait is getting hit. Bahrain is getting, all these countries are getting hit.
All these countries are getting hit. Well, yeah, they all have U.S. bases. They're getting hit in the U.S. bases, and in some cases, the hotels where you took the U.S. troops and put them in civilian buildings. You can't engage in aggression and not expect people to try to defend themselves. And as I noted, Trump was explicitly warned that this would happen, both by U.S. intelligence and public experts, about the exact scenario he claimed was unpredictable. Today, at his press conference, multiple credible reports confirm he received briefings beforehand that striking Iran, including Karg Island, risked Iranian missile and drone retaliation targeting U.S. bases and assets in Gulf states, the UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, potentially drawing those countries into the conflict. Iran itself had publicly and repeatedly signaled this response. Let's go to Yahoo. Here it is. Oh, look. Trump warned Iran strikes could trigger retaliation on U.S. Gulf allies, sources say. And this comes from the Jerusalem Post, but originally from Reuters. Pre-war intelligence assessments did not say that Iran's response was a guarantee, but it certainly was on the list of potential outcomes. Duh. A 10-year-old could figure that out. Just look at the map. Wow. Holy smoke. Donald. It's very strange because Donald Trump is all over the place. And I literally have something here to show you. At one point of the day, he said one thing, and another point of the day, he said something completely opposite. It's amazing. Let me show you more. I'll give you some more. His confusion. A state of confusion, my friends. This, for example, shows how Gangland Don's varying statements about control over the Strait of Hormuz within the course of an hour changed. And Glenn Deason's got this. Pretty soon they're going to try to ban Glenn Deason, I bet. We'll get the FCC chair after him. Here's Donald.
If needed help, they won't be there for us. I've just known that for a long period of time. We have some that are really enthusiastic. They're coming over.
So at 12:21 p.m., he says that the allies won't be there to help. The United States, he's very upset. Oh, it's always been the United States is the one behind NATO, and we're protecting all of them, never mentioning that NATO is the U.S. plaything. Duh. And they are basically the beard, the Europeans, for United States actions within NATO to direct it the way they want to and overthrow countries and do all sorts of stuff, expanding into the former Iron Curtain areas. But then at 12:53, you say, well, yeah, well, we've got a lot of them. We're talking to a lot of them. They're coming on board.
Ready. This isn't need. Need would be one of the big boys. If we need their mine boats, or if we need anything, any piece of apparatus that they may have because of a situation that they have, they should be jumping to help us. We want them to come and help us with the.
So he wants them to come
My
to help,
attitude is,
but evidently they're not coming to help.
We're the strongest.
He wants them to help, but they're not coming to help, but they are coming to help. They're jumping at the chance. Okay, if you say so. Now, more confusion regarding Iran. Trump says we can wrap, Ducey asks him, can we wrap this war up this week? Trump says, yeah, sure. Ducey says, will we? Trump says, I don't think so. We'll skip over that one to this one. This Earth Hippie says, it's a little unfair of Iran to fight back. A little unfair. I'm sure many of you saw these things, but check this out.
One. So it's a little unfair. You know, you win a war, but they have no right to be doing what they're doing. But we're hitting them very hard. And today is a big day where we're pounding a certain area that has very much to do with the Strait. And I think we'll get it going very soon.
So, of course, yes, they've won the war, but it's not over. The war isn't over. They haven't won the war. It's a little unfair that these people that the United States has beaten continue to fight this war. And, so obviously the war is over, but it's not over. Right? Is that the way that it works? I think. Something like that. Let's head on over and check out some of the excellent RT coverage of this. I want to give this to you. RT's got it, and we're going to go for it. And then in just about 13 minutes, our guest, Yona, will be with us to talk to us about some American history, and we'll also discuss this 250th anniversary of Evacuation Day. So stay tuned for that, my friends. Let me give you some of this information about the assassination, the wartime, undeclared war killing of a major figure in Iran. I'll give you some of that information, and it is very troubling the way that the United States is treating this. I'll give you the information here. All right. In my news notes, you'll see down here, U.S. attack on Iran kills high-profile Iranian government official. Iranian Supreme National Security Council Secretary Ali Larijani, you probably have heard his name, has been assassinated in an overnight strike by the IDF. By the way, Jackson Hinkle has an excellent post about Tulsi Gabbard and the number of times she called for peace in Iran. And I'll see if I can find that for you. But here he is on the streets. He was very popular in Iran. Very, very popular. So we've got the RT story about his killing. Iran's security chief killed. Iran confirmed the deaths of top security official Ali Larijani and Brigadier General Gholamezra Soleimani, the commander of the Basij paramilitary force. These are major figures, but of course they've got a system there to keep going. U.S. President Trump earlier criticized NATO members and partner nations for not joining the war in Iran after a number of allies refused to heed his call to send warships to secure the Strait. This is their live update thing, but want to give you a little bit more here. So we're going to go with RT and their coverage of this and show you this, because this is a major blow for many people who really, really liked this man in Iran.
He has killed Iran's Supreme National Security Council Secretary Ali Larijani in an overnight attack, although Tehran has yet to confirm the news. Larijani had a $10 million bounty on his head, but the Israeli Foreign Ministry said that the quote, did it for free.
Larijani was also under U.S. sanctions for the same reason, with a $10 million prize on his head. We did it for free. Anyhow.
Israel's defense minister confirming the idea.
I want to pause it there. We did it for free. So that's real flip, isn't it? Isn't that nice? So the aggressors are, again, rubbing it in the face of the people they're attacking. The ethics of that are completely contrary to the traditions of war, chivalry, anything like that. But they long ago, centuries ago, they dropped that. I want to mention, however, they didn't do it for free. We paid for that. What they claim we did for free, we already gave all that weaponry to Israel. The United States weapons go to Israel. Most of the weapons Israel is using against Iran came from the U.S., some from England, some from Germany. So they didn't do it for friggin' free. They did it off of us. That's all the state ever can do. The state can never do anything for free, because the state can only get its resources off of the backs of the people it exploits. And nobody can deny that. Here's Charlotte Dubinsky. She did a very good job here.
Managed to, in its word, eliminate Ali Larijani, who is the secretary of the Supreme National Security Council in Iran. This is a man who is considered to be incredibly important in the politics of Iran, a veteran politician, 67 years old, has decades of experience behind him. This is a man who was known as being a skilled negotiator. He had dealt with the top tiers in Russia, in China, in the US, even when it came to negotiations for his country. This is a man who is seen as being incredibly close to the former supreme leader of Iran, and seen as somebody who would be the hand that could guide the country to success, to keep it together if anything happened to the now former supreme leader, which of course it did, because he was assassinated in those US-Israeli strikes.
Now, a lot of folks are speculating online. If you read some of the military journals and so on and so forth, I took a glance at a couple of those. I'm not going to post a lot of those things. I don't think I ever do. But one of the things that I think is important is that this isn't going to change anything for the United States and Israel over the long term. Iran is still going to control the Gulf. Iran has lots of logistical and tactical advantages that the United States and Israel cannot overcome. Israel is very, very small. The United States and Israel are running out of resources. They can't put troops on the ground. They can't even put sailing ships into the Gulf sufficiently to maintain anything, let alone supply chains that could feed troops that might try to reside on Karg Island. There's an open invitation for other nations to do deals inside with Iran, inside the Persian Gulf, and Iran is allowing any of the ships that are not flagged with flags associated with the U.S. or Israel to do their business, and they have been doing their business, and they are moving. So this is important to keep in mind, I think, very important. One of the things I want to mention to you is that people like the economic mind of Mr. Hassett continue to try to explain to us that everything is hunky-dory, David Bowie, and their confusion is really an absolute mess. Let me give you some of this information. Just like Donald Trump is confused, Kevin Hassett continues to smile and lie and dismiss the reality facing consumers. Power to the People writes, Trump economic advisor Kevin Hassett just said the quiet part out loud. And I mentioned this at the start of the show. He utterly dismisses the consumers here, you guys. Quote, if the war were to be extended, it wouldn't really disrupt the U.S. economy at all. That's the first part. Keep that in mind. It wouldn't disrupt the economy at all. Then he says, it would hurt consumers, but that's really the last of our concerns right now. Yeah. And as Power to the People noted, they don't care about us at all. Let me show you Hassett. This is one I had to amp up in the sound system.
U.S. economy is fundamentally sound, and that if it were to be extended, it wouldn't really disrupt the U.S. economy very much at all. It would hurt consumers, and we'd have to think about, if that continued, what we would have to do about that. But that's like really the last of our concerns right now, because we're very confident that this thing is going ahead of schedule.
Astounding. It just is amazing. And, I'm glad, every once in a while when you're doing something, you sort of pinpoint people that are going to be really, really problematic. They're real problems, real trouble. You can just tell that their entire mindset is completely disconnected from anything ethical, any form of consideration for the average person out there. They're in their own bubble. They're solipsistic. And that's Kevin Hassett in a nutshell. And it's also Donald Trump. Donald Trump as well. They don't care. They do not care. And, again, I would think that anybody looking at this would think that Donald Trump is trying to destroy the U.S. economy intentionally, whether it's from the lockdowns from his first term or the tariffs or this. I want to show you what the Strait of Hormuz looks like right now for people who are doing business that aren't associated with Iran, with Israel and the United States. That's what it looks like. And it looks like it would be an amazing place. Let me show you. It looks like it would be an amazing place to go. Waiting for the computer to respond. There we go. It looks like it would be an amazing place to go on so many of those areas to see what life is like there. It'd be fascinating. Pretty amazing. So Trump is shooting all American consumers in the foot, even as they're killing people in an unconstitutional attack on Iran. I also want to note this for you about NATO. As much of a good thing it would be to pull out of NATO, Trump does not explicate the fact that he has a constitutional duty to pull out. This person, Asen, says, reporter, are you thinking about getting out of NATO? Trump says, well, I'm disappointed in NATO. I don't need Congress for that decision. As you probably know, I can make that decision myself. Now, if you go over to the notes on X, you'll see that underneath this post, they've added reader's commentary. The president cannot single-handedly withdraw the United States from NATO. Congress must approve any withdrawal. That's false. That's incorrect. The president has a sworn duty to protect and defend the Constitution and to only act on constitutional statutes. If the president, in his decision-making, in his opinion, believes that a statute is unconstitutional, he can take action and not execute that statute. He is duty-bound not to do so if he thinks that there is something unconstitutional, just like the soldiers in the executive branch, of course. It's up to Congress then to respond to say, no, we think what you just did rises to the level, to use the classic terminology, of a high crime and misdemeanor. So we are going to impeach you in Congress and try you in the Senate for not executing what we see as a constitutional statute. That's the idea of different houses, different branches. But nobody bothers. Nobody thinks about these things. It might be worth thinking about these things and teaching kids about some of these things. And it might have been worth teaching Joe Kent about those things too. Maybe. Joe Kent, be interesting to hear what he has to say. In the meantime, he could have gotten out a long time before this man lost his life. And again, he's a political figure earning his money off taxes brought in Iran. So got to give a commentary there. But when it comes to state action, I think one can clearly see which is the aggressor party over decades and which has not been the aggressor party over decades. It's the United States is the aggressor, Israel is the aggressor, and Iran is not the aggressor.